Hey,
Hi,
how's it
I'm
going?
in a. It's good. I have a new background for
I
the week.
know, I know. Where are you?
Yeah, I am at summer camp for Savannah. So I hanging out in an Airbnb. So a
Love it.
little change of pace. So it's been nice though.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah,
Very fun.
thanks. Yeah,
Well, I'm super excited for podcast number 4. I'm gonna run out of fingers soon. But
we'll just include mine. So
yeah,
just
I'll start doing one hands when I get to 10, and then we'll do it. Um,
It's-
yeah, no, I'm super excited. We've covered a lot of ground in episodes 1 through 3, which I think feels really good. But today, you and I were chatting, and we felt like it was a perfect moment to start to dig into the second of the 3 career sandwich pillars, which is building your path. It's obviously a meaty one. It's a big statement and not super easy for everyone to put into practice for a whole host of reasons, which I think we can break down a little bit today. But we've got a lot of thoughts on the topic and thought it'd be cool to just kind of dig into it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, I think when I talk, I don't know about you, but when I talk to folks about career sandwich and I explain those 3 pillars, so knowing yourself, building your path, staying organized, again, one of the biggest questions we get is like, how do you do that? What does that mean? So
Mhm,
maybe we start
mhm.
the conversation with, okay, what do we actually mean when we say we want people to build their own path? Feels like a good place to
Yeah,
start. I've got some
yeah.
thoughts. Not sure if you want to kick it off.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, a lot of that comes down to just the intentionality, right? Not just, when I talk to folks, who various stages in their career, they literally have said to me like, I just don't know how I got here.
Hmm.
And not that it's bad, but that's their like when I show them kind of what we're building, there's that like, oh yeah, this is really cool because I just don't know how I got here. And it's true because you typically kind of just go about your day, about your life, about your career. You take an opportunity or you know, open a door for yourself and then boom. Then you look back and like, how did this even happen? So I think for me, that intentionality in being curious, but still being clear about the path you want to take is important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, when we were thinking through what exact words we wanted to use for each of those pillars, the word build really stuck out to
Mm-hmm.
us as something that was rooted in intentionality, proactivity. Uh, and again,
Yeah.
not to say that folks on the whole aren't trying to bring those energies to their careers today, but the world looks different than it did, you know,
Yeah.
5,
Yeah.
10, 20 years ago. And an analogy I use all the time where I see a lot of people, their shoulders drop and they're like, oh, you get it. You see me, not dissimilar to what you just said, is this
Yeah.
idea of a lazy river, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were
Mm-hmm.
young, they got in some job that was on whatever trajectory. And sure, they've made some decisions along the way, but on the whole, there's this sort of undercurrent that's pulled them to where they are. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, it's hard to change direction in a lazy river when the current is
Yeah.
pulling
Yeah.
you in one way. And that's not to
Yeah.
say it's impossible, but it's hard. And so
Mm-hmm.
building your own path is, sort of this idea of this more elevated lazy river where
Yeah.
there's almost
Yeah.
gates along the way that you can,
Yeah.
slide out if you
I,
want or try to,
yeah. Yeah. For me, it's like it's about that control, right? Taking control of it, the choice that you can
Yep.
get. Um, I think choice is a very powerful tool. But then also it's like the difference between the lazy river and hiking, right? It's like when we set out to go hike, typically there's unless you're carving fresh, paths in our landscape, but typically there's a path you're on and you can kind of follow those markings and you're kind of heading towards the end of this trail or whatever it may be. And if you veer off, you kind of have a way to get back. And I think that's the difference between just letting your career kind of like evolve and kind of move and like you said, just kind of sit on a lazy river versus, okay, I know I want to get here to the top of this mountain
Mm-hmm.
or top of this hill or to this checkpoint. This is the path I need to take to get there. There it will be challenging at times, but that's kind of what makes the joy of the journey of hiking actually so rewarding is when you get there, you're like, I did it. I did the thing, you know? So,
Totally. Totally. Sorry, I just put my computer on do not disturb so you don't hear my notifications. My bad.
oh, nice. I don't think I even heard them. So,
My apologies if anyone else did.
yeah. You
Um,
know what? That's a good reminder. Maybe I should do the same.
well, I like that. I like that idea of hiking. I am I am lucky enough. My partner in life is very situationally aware. You know, you could drop him in the middle of nowhere and he would find his way home, you know, without
Nice.
much effort at all. I am not blessed with such 3D thinking skills, and we've been on plenty of hikes and outdoor adventures together. And it's kind of a funny thing where, you know, if I went on those hikes and fully didn't pay attention, like just followed the leader
Mm,
and just sort of enjoyed the ride. And then if you know something ever happened where I got separated, you know, wouldn't know my way back. And so
yeah.
there's something kind of actually similar when we think about building our path, which is why I like
Yeah.
the analogy in our own careers is it's actually a disservice to yourself to just sort of blindly take the lazy river.
Mm,
And we you have to actually, even if you're not necessarily the person at the helm, the person leading the path, leading the hike, leading the
yeah.
whatever, you still have to be paying attention along the way. Look for these markers, look for these cues, and be situationally aware so that if something ever goes sideways, you actually have a fighting chance to like get out and get back to where you want to be. I mean, you know, you
Yeah.
think about layoffs or, you know, your company goes under or, you know, who knows? There's 10 million ways that that could manifest in a professional setting. And
Yeah.
it's a it is a very unnerving place to be when suddenly you feel like the ground has just fallen out underneath you and you have nothing to grab onto.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think of if this is kind of one of the dangers you could say around just letting the company you work for figure the path out for you, right? Is that's the path that they think is best for you. And
Or
for
them.
whatever reason, or as for yeah, or
Yeah.
for them, you for whatever reason they determine that's the path for you, and
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you're going along just smooth, like you said. Then something falls out of that, and you're like, "What? I was just blinders on, following the leader. I was
Mhm.
just following what you said I should do, and then something happens out of your control.
Mhm.
Something happens, and you're sitting there going." Well, I never prepared for this, or I trusted this person to get me to the top of that mountain.
Mhm.
And it hurts even more, right? Because you feel betrayed. You feel like
Mhm.
you you're almost mad at yourself at times, because you're like, well, why did I do that? I know better than. But
Mhm.
that's the ease that just felt right at the time. So I mean, I think having that path, like you said, really does allow you to come back, get back on course at any given time. And
Yeah.
then kind of allows you to reach for your toolkit, like you if you get in a panic state, you have something to draw back to because you built that toolkit around your own path, not their path. It's what you need to get to where you need to be. It's your own personal set of tools, and get you to your path, not theirs. So
I think that's an important point that is often an uncomfortable topic for a lot of us these days. This idea that there are hard truths that we need to acknowledge that weren't necessarily true 5, 10 20 years ago in our professional lives. And,
Mm-hmm.
there are pockets of great managers, great leaders, great companies who really do try to invest in their people, get them where they want to be. But on the whole, companies are looking out for themselves, right? And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I've been on, I feel I have the right to
Mm-hmm.
say that. I've been the representative of the company. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I would do everything in my power to make things right for people. And even so, at the end of the day, like it was my job to ultimately do what was right for the company. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think just acknowledging that and naming that helps create a little bit of space and makes it feel a little less doomsday when we say something like, oh, build your safety net so that when you are
Mm-hmm.
building your path, you don't
Mm-hmm.
get totally obliterated along the way. And
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we don't mean it in a doomsday type of way, we mean it in this is a tried and true strategy that
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody uses.
Yeah. That sense of, loyalty, right, is I think one of the many reasons why, I think people can find themselves in this spot is, they're loving what they're doing, they're loyal to the company, they're connected to the mission.
Mhm.
So they kind of just in that, I think in that vulnerability, they forget about what they need.
Mhm.
It's kind of like on an airplane, like you got to put your mask on first, right? Because when it comes down to it, you know, they can only be so loyal, like as a company. And we've talked about this maybe last week or the week before. So, you know, getting people out of that, to your point, like today is a different world, like it's a different world, and careers look different than it did many, many years ago. Loyalty is great, but not at the expense of, where you want to go and how you want to get there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of building a path versus finding a path. I
mm-hmm,
think some of the folks I know that you and I have chatted with over the last months and years, um, building can feel intimidating to a lot of folks. And
yeah, yeah,
just even the conversation that we're having right now, yeah, I think it's important to name that building doesn't mean building your path and having your safety bag and all these things doesn't mean go renegade. And
yeah, yeah,
but that's
yeah,
not like I want to put like
yeah.
a big PSA on the screen. Like we don't mean
Yeah,
caution.
blow,
But
yeah, blow up your, yeah,
that's
exactly.
not
Yes.
what we're getting at here.
Um,
So we toyed around with the idea of like, do we like the word finding your path versus building your
mhm,
path?
mhm,
And there's some nuance there. I think they're both
mhm.
applicable.
I think
Um,
so. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, so from like just to kind of break this down a little bit, yeah, I mean, because I do remember this conversation strongly. It was like, there's sort of two different. There's many different personas that we talk to, but there's definitely two clear, like, folks who may be on a path that or have chosen a career journey that's you know built with clear benchmarks, gates, certifications, and things you need to do to reach the next level or to progress along, right? And I think I think about certifications, I think of lawyers, doctors, very
totally.
clear, like I don't necessarily want a doctor to go rogue and come,
Make my
come
own
up with some
one.
new yeah.
Totally.
Appreciate that level of structure. But then there's other paths, like for me being a creative, it opens a door more for like building
Mhm.
and maybe building an agency or building a studio or exploring some other engineers, developers build, a lot of times they go into building their own software or whatever it may, or open source tooling. I and like you said, Shelby, like we're not sitting here saying like everybody needs to, this isn't a, I think of like the kind of some of the influencer stuff you see out there. It's like everybody's off to like, we're convincing everybody to go and become this radical,
Mhm.
you know, build your path and that's the only way forward in life. No, I think what is similar in all of those scenarios though is it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of like self discovery, no matter what path you're on. It takes going through challenges. It takes knowing where you want to go so that you can work through those journeys, enjoy them when it and enjoy those, enjoy that and enjoy them when it gets hard. Know that it's just temporary and the next thing is you know, on its way. So it's to sort of just help us distinguish, you know, for those who want to build, this is kind of a way you can build. For those who are on the finding a path, these are the things that you're going to encounter, and there's tools that work for both scenarios.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, you know, maybe the simple way to articulate it is everyone has a path. Some people see their path ahead of time, and other people are laying one
Mm-hmm.
brick at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, yeah,
both are valid
that's a
and
good way.
both are right.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's what I like about Career Sandwich is that, and what we're trying to do here is we actually can support both. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
need both, right? We need the doctors, we need
Yeah,
coaches, we need all the things, and we also
yeah.
need the people who are inventing the new and you know,
Mm-hmm.
out what the new world of work looks like, and all of these things need to coexist.
They
And
do. Yeah, because that's where I mean that's what moves our entire world, right? I mean, you have the careers that are kind of foundational to our survival, and then you have the innovators, and you know, it's like you can be a dreamer and a doer, right? And we can all live together, but we also all need a set of tools that kind of get us to our own version of what our, you know, our success or our career, well, the career and the life that we all crave. So, in fact, I mean, we do hear that often, like, you know, are you going to build something for like, if I wanted to start off and build my own company? I'm like, that's a whole nother thing that I don't want to get into quite yet. But I think it's relevant for, you know, it just shows that like we're talking to two different folks every single day that need some of the very similar tools and tips and tricks and resources. So,
yeah,
question for you. Oh yeah, go ahead. No, I have a question for you on just, you know, because again, you talk with folks who've just been recently, you know, oftentimes, you know, transitioning out of a company, either proactively or reactive, and they're sitting down with you and you're explaining this framework to them. And like, okay, I can get knowing myself. Like, okay, that makes sense. Ooh, building my path like this, like I don't know where I want to go. And you know, what is keeping people from really owning this concept, you know, of either finding or building,
mhm.
versus just kind of getting up and just, you know, because I think this is where people in those moments they just go back to what they've been doing because it's, you know, like, hey, I'm just gonna get my resume, dust it all off and keep
Mhm.
doing, you know, like what's keeping people from like truly owning this path.
Bud, uh, fear, uncertainty, and doubts.
Yeah. Fair, fair.
Um,
Fear is a big driver too.
fear,
A lot
fear,
of things. Yeah.
fear is a big one. And you know, I would say that, you know, uncertainty and doubt are just cousins of fear. They're all very
Yeah.
related. But
Yeah.
on the whole, I mean, that's why we all resist change at a biological level. You know, it's like you have
Mm-hmm.
this, like, oh, I think that the grass could be greener. I have this instinct,
Mm-hmm.
something doesn't feel quite right. And yet taking that leap feels really scary. Why? Like that's your body doing its job. Your body is trying to keep you
Yeah.
safe in
Yeah.
a space. And so I always like to just kind of like let that fear is there to protect you, but also you can overcome and get through it. Like don't let it don't let it restrict you. Let it protect you by getting
Yeah.
ahead of
Yeah.
the things that make you nervous. What and you know, and that's where like the question asking really begins. Like, okay, what scares you about I was chatting with someone
Mm-hmm.
recently. They've been in sales forever and they recently were let go from their organization, and they were like, I don't want to be in sales anymore. Or at least sales
Mm,
in this category, like in this space that I'm in. I have lost all the zest for it. It's not exciting for me
mm,
anymore. But like I don't know even how to begin to get somewhere else what I want to be. And there's too much at stake. I've got a family, I've got a mortgage, I've got my cars, I got my
mm,
kids, I got,
mm, mm,
all the things of life that stack up. And through the question asking process, you start to you can actually get really specific about what are the
mm,
things that you are afraid of in
mm,
getting to where you want to be. And
mm,
when you put them on paper, it releases a little bit of the pressure of them. It takes away a little bit of their power. Like you've
mm,
taken this thing out of your chest or out of your brain or out of your heart, you put it on paper. And then you can start to create a little bit of space between it and start to say, okay, well, what would need to be true for that bullet point to no longer be scary for me? What would need to be true for
mm.
that bullet point to no longer be scary for me?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you start to literally move down these things one line at a time. You're in real time creating your blueprint for your safety net, like when we
Mm,
were
mm,
just talking about earlier, or your safety bag. And
yeah,
so I actually am glad that people are afraid when they
yeah.
go to.
That's what I was just gonna say. It almost sounds like, sitting in that fear for a little bit is part of this job of actually being able to build the path, right? Because by sitting in that, you then get to start to break all this down and say, like, okay, if this is true, then what's next? And like, how do I, it can also be very, I guess, empowering then, once you acknowledge that's what's going on. So, and, I think that gives you, like you said, the ability to start to like, okay, how do I start to mitigate some of these things? Is that I need to build like we've been calling it, like a safety bag, right? Something that like, and if I'm in a moment of stress,
Mhm.
here's the thing that my body, like, because I think everybody knows what those triggers are. Okay, what do I need to go and grab to kind of like get out of that? Um,
I would
sometimes, yeah, yeah.
I would challenge you a little bit on that. Like I'm not
Mm,
sure that everybody does fully appreciate the full suite of fears that we all possess in ourselves.
tell me more.
Like
I'm very curious.
when I have these conversations with people, it very frequently goes to the tactical. I'm afraid of not
Mm,
having a paycheck. I'm afraid of
really?
not being able to pay my rent. I'm afraid of these things. It takes a lot more pulling the layers back on the onion to get to I'm afraid of being laughed at. I'm
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I'm afraid people won't like my idea, and
Hmm.
and it'll be a failure. I'm afraid that those are bigger, meatier things. And some people are comfortable just saying that straight out the gate, but
Yeah.
not dissimilar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's almost some, maybe it exists, I could go find it. There's some like hierarchy of fears where we weirdly find comfort in the fear of tactical things, the day in and day out things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's harder for us to have conversations about these big, meaty fears that
Yeah.
actually need some more pulling apart to get to the root of.
That's interesting because I would have assumed that a lot of, like, in those conversations you're having with folks in that moment, it's like, well, I don't know, what's going to happen after the X, Y, and Z. It's almost like they want to make these changes or they want to start to kind of do something different, but the fear of doing the different, or the fear of, like you said, carving out and betting on themselves, perhaps, like, will that, how will people respond to that? That's interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, the example I just shared, the person who was let go of their sales role, and they were telling me, want to make a paycheck, want to be able to, continue to provide for their family and all that stuff. It was probably 3 to 4 weeks after meeting this individual that they finally not finally, that they shared with me that they still hadn't told any of their friends about their reality, that they had been let go
Oh,
from.
wow.
Yeah. And it was
Hmm.
just such a, and we had talked, this person and I had talked for weeks, and they're great and amazing, and I adore them. And even through all those conversations, I wasn't able to build enough trust for them to be able to say that full
Yeah.
thing. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed. And
Yeah.
so the homework I gave them was, when you get off this call today, you need to tell one of your friends, and mark my words, you're going to feel lighter. This
Yeah.
pressure in
Yeah.
your system that's been filling, you're going to let out some of that air, and I promise you're going to feel better about it.
Mhm.
And the report back was that they did. They felt significantly lighter
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's like one of the, like, when I think of the things that can mitigate, fears, I think there's a lot of different things, but I definitely think having your own personal trusted, you know, personal advisors or people that that get you, that you can obviously feel comfortable sharing things like this. And those don't have to be people in your family. Like, there's a lot of people that you probably worked with or or know of someone that could sit in your corner in these moments and just, say, hey, this is happening, and give you that little bit of a place to kind of rethink something. Or, I mean, we all should. I mean, I know I have a handful of folks that I'm always tapping, and it really does help you either A, stay on course if you start to feel like you're getting a little bit lost, or something happens in your career, like, transition that you need to draw on and get kind of pulled back together and like, hey, you have this, all that stuff matters, I think, in that spirit of, removing fear. So, and then
100%.
practicing,
Gosh, practice.
there's, yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's so important, and nobody does it.
yeah,
Well,
I
not
know.
enough people do it. But
Yeah.
practice, I mean, we should probably unpack that, because you and I have talked about this a gazillion times, but there is a wild misconception out in the world that these people who do big things, make big shifts, are fully in control of their world and their life and
Hmm.
all this stuff, that it's just casual and effortless.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, well, like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
not the case at
Exactly.
all. And it's because they practice, they do the reps over and over and
Yeah.
over for
Yeah.
these things,
They're
whatever these.
confident. Yeah, they're confident in that, and then they look confident, and it looks like they know where they're going because they are constantly practicing, working on this. It's like, it's how they show up. It's how they how they tell their pitch. It's how they, network. I mean, it's all integrated into it. It's very much like so many other disciplines where you need to practice,
Mhm,
how you play, right? The practice how you play. It's like,
mhm.
or play how you practice, sports, all that stuff. I mean, the most confident folks are the ones that are putting in that work because it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
It means nothing for them to say, hey, peace, my time here is done, because they know when that time is done for them. Like, they aren't leaving that stuff to chance. They're just like, hey, I can see the writing. I know where I'm going. I need something new or whatever it may be. And they're like, they've already done it. They've already practiced what that exit looks like for them. And they're off. In most cases, they've already have the next thing lined up. They're that good, about how they navigate their career.
Mhm. No,
So,
totally. And it's so interesting because people avoid, I mean, let's use a very simple example. Interviewing.
mm-hmm,
Tons of interviewing makes millions of people very nervous. And understandably, you're sitting in a room with someone you likely have never met before, and you're kind of getting grilled, and you're nervous because you really want this gig, and you want to impress them, and you want to look competent and smart and sharp, and you want to be your
mm-hmm,
best, all the things. There's a lot at stake.
yeah,
Uh, and every interviewer on planet Earth has a slightly different style. So you don't really know exactly what you're getting into. That can feel
mm-hmm,
very unnerving. I understand. And therefore, people can get afraid of that. But why on earth would we wait until the moment of the live interview to practice? Like, why would that be the first time you're
Yeah.
actually going through some of these revs and answering some of the questions that you can anticipate you'll be
Hmm.
asked, right?
Hmm.
We should be doing that far in advance, well outside of the arena of an actual job on the line. That should just
Hmm.
be something that you're practicing on the regular so that whenever the
Yeah.
time does come, you feel ready to rock straight out the gate.
Yeah. That's what I remember when we look at our product, we were thinking a few of the features and things that could help people with interviewing. That was one of the reasons why I put in reflections, right? Is like these are interview questions without them being interview questions. And, most people aren't reflecting enough to so that when something falls in front of them, like, well, tell me about this time where you're most, X, Y, and Z and how you work through this challenge or most proud of whatever, they're thinking about it for the first time. It's like, no, like think about it, note it. It's going to come back somewhere in your career, and whether it's an interview or a networking event, whatever it is. So, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, putting in that effort to get comfortable. I mean, it's like you know find somebody who is just really good at like find. I'm just thinking of like even like structure like what could the worst interview ever be like? Find your friend to like ask you like we all know that person who's just really good at interrogating and just really good at wanting to be in that like hard spot with you and just say, hey, just ask me some questions and just get good at it. Doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be a formal interview, but
No,
definitely. Yeah.
it certainly doesn't need to be anything formal, but there is this weird irony that because it doesn't have to be formal, it actually, a lot of folks feel awkward in that moment. Like,
Mm,
I
yeah.
want to ask my friends to do what?
Yeah.
Like, how,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yeah.
this just feels weird. And
Yeah.
it is crazy how much awkwardness cuts people off at the knees in terms of their ability to move
Mm,
forward. So, like, I tell people all the time, just name the thing. Literally opening
yeah.
sentence. This
Yeah.
is going to be awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Name it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
But yeah.
once you name it, you can move on and get to like
Mm,
where you actually want to be and actually have the
yeah.
conversation, have the productive practice interview, whatever
Yeah.
it may be. But it's really funny to me how
Yeah.
that feeling of like, oh, it's like awkward. Like
Yeah.
it's only awkward
And,
because you just haven't done the
yeah.
rep.
And we can shift gears here, but this also kind of goes back to like what we were saying in the last episode about getting comfortable with just not just naming the thing, but like what do you need from the people in your life
Mhm.
to a get help you build your path, help you own your path, help you practice, help you build your state, whatever the things are. Like for some reason, we just all expect people to know, and I don't know. That's just not fair to them. It's not, it's like we all have friends that it's like, I always find it weird. Like sometimes people are open to talking about their careers. Other time it's like this thing that's like, I can't tell you what's going on in my career. Everything has to be good. But no, like it's not that way, and like we just need to be comfortable saying, like, hey, friend, like any advice that you have about dealing with a manager who may or may not be I'm not rocking. It's just not working right now. Like you'd be surprised how often your friends and people close to you truly want to help you in those moments and share advice. But we just kind of don't want to commingle in that. I don't know. At least I found that to be interesting. Like we just
Yeah.
expect us all to kind of. They just. I think it's maybe it's that like what you were saying that some of the fear of like being judged or like well what it could be me. I'm the only one or
Yeah.
maybe that's all comes back to that fear.
Well, I mean, I think that's a really good point is there is this societal expectation that we all just should know what to do and when to do it.
Mm-hmm.
naturally. And that's, to your point, wildly unfair. Because the
Yeah.
truth is, we're social creatures. We learn together. That's in
Hmm.
our DNA. And so there is this idea of, when you build your path, you also, a key part of that is finding your crew and finding your pack
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go on that path with.
Correct.
No one's going to
Yeah.
tell you to hike Everest alone. Like, that's a recipe
Yeah.
for disaster.
Absolutely.
Don't try to do that in your
Yep.
career either. And
Yep.
you can
Yeah.
find those people in different pockets. Sometimes it's your social
Yeah.
friends, but there's a super untapped market, I think, in this idea of professional communities
Yeah.
where you can find people who are not in the exact same path, but similar trajectories. And what can you learn from them?
Yeah.
And how can you
And
support
that,
each
and that's been one of the biggest things that I think we've been trying to like that we've kind of leaned into is career sandwich as a whole. Like when somebody's like, oh, are you just not in some cases not placement agency? Do you just do resume? Like, it's like, no, we're not. These are the essentials, like kind of that need to be built and how we support. But
other?
at the end of the day, we are hopefully that place that you can go to, when you need to check in on yourself or you want to like, hey, do you know somebody else that's a member who could be able to help me with X, Y, or Z? Or,
Mhm.
we're trying to build that place where you can go to find the answers that you need or, work through and practice, whatever challenging thing you have and be that safety bag or whatever that is to kind of always go back to center. I mean, like you said, Shelby, like we can't sit there and like tell you like this is your career path, like go and do it. These are the like that's too nuanced, but we can be the place that helps you through it, provides the tools, provide the resources, provide the guidance, provides the time to sit down with either of us and
Mhm.
just get a different perspective, and then you can kind of keep climbing or keep moving or make the adjustments you need
Mhm.
to get there. So
100%. And it's a question we get all the time. It's like, and we're very clear about saying, we're not traditional outplacement. I'm not going to give you the answers. You're not going to give any of the answers because we don't have the answers. It's not trying to be a
mm-hmm.
cop out. It's naming the
Mm-hmm.
reality that the only person on planet Earth that knows what's right for you is you. And
Yeah. Yeah.
what we do is ask questions, put you in stretch, potentially slightly uncomfortable situations to like challenge your own thinking, kind of
Mm-hmm.
shift your perspective if needed, get you talking to people and that maybe you hadn't been before, but opening up your mind and helping you start to see different paths and
Yeah. Yeah.
versions of progression for yourself that maybe you weren't able to see prior. And that's
Yeah.
when we feel like we've won, is
Yeah.
when
That always, yeah. It's that unlock moment, right? It's like,
totally,
you
yeah.
get off that call. I mean, I've had those a few times this week, even where I'm just like, I just felt so good,
Mhm.
and you can tell that person's like ready to rock and roll, or, just as a whole, you just feel like you're solving bigger things than like, is your
Totally.
resume formatted perfectly?
Yeah,
Or, it's like those
totally.
are the problems people are faced with today are much bigger than, you know, just the resume.
Oh, 100%. I was on a call this morning with someone who they and I had been working for a few weeks on an updated resume and a cover letter, which, for those of you that don't know my perspective on cover letters yet, I think that they are a good forcing function to get your personal career story really tight.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like to do them. Whether or not you actually use it in that form is up for debate, but I
Mm-hmm.
could do a whole nother podcast just on cover letters.
Yeah. We,
But
yeah, we should.
um, all to say, this person, to give them a million kudos, put in the work. We had been doing, I think this was week 4, that 3 or 4 that we'd been working together, and went through multiple revs. And where we landed today was really, really, really strong, like light years ahead of what they had
That's
before.
awesome.
And then as we were wrapping up the call, I just said, is there anything else I can help you with? And they shared, like, I think I'm good. I'm wrapping up an interview with this company, whatever. I said, oh, that's exciting. How do you feel like that's going? I said, well, I'm anticipating an offer. I think it's going really well.
It's
And
awesome.
I said, great, love that. And they said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to take it. I don't think it's quite right for me. And I was like,
Wow.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
That's awesome. Yeah.
and, obviously there's context. This person is in a position where they can do that. But more importantly, it just felt so good to have
Mhm.
the work of getting really, really crisp about what this person wants
Yeah.
in the next phase of their career. And then having
Love
that
it.
going through the mechanism of making that so sharp and so concise with no ambiguity, no room for uncertainty, that they could
Yeah.
just directly apply that to this role that they were interviewing for and say, it's not right for me. And I
Yeah.
said, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
then the next click in the spirit of building their path, I said, okay, well, one thing that you could consider if you're anticipating an offer, that means they're excited about you. You should have in your back pocket if they do give you an offer and you politely decline and say, just at this point, at this juncture, this isn't quite right for me, but I thank you so much for the opportunity. If they double down and they say something to the effect of, well, what would make you say yes? We really are excited about you having joined the
Mm.
company. I said, you should have your wish list. Like what needs to be true
Yeah. Yeah.
this job to be the right next step in your path for you. And they were
Yeah.
like, am I allowed to do that? I'd never even thought to do that. I'm 100% allowed to do that. And
That's great.
you absolutely
Yeah.
should. So it's all tied together. Like the knowing yourself is key here,
Exactly.
and it's what informs what steps you take next. And it's
Yeah.
really quite remarkable when it all
I
comes
mean,
together.
I love this story because it hits 100% on control and choice. Like I was saying earlier, like this person has the confidence
Mhm,
at this moment to say no in a market that we're in right now
mhm,
because they know they're in control of what they want.
mhm.
They're not going to just take the first thing that comes their way and are confident enough to know that like something else is going to come around that's a little bit closer to what I need. And they know that because they've done the work to know who they are. To your point, just like we talked about last week, like that negotiation is starting right now.
Mhm.
Like, okay, well, what do I want? Well, I know what I need because I did the work. And so I can sit down and say, these are the things I need for this to actually work for me. They may or may not hit on those things at all, but you at least know to be able to have the conversation in a way that keeps you in the driver's seat of this narrative versus, just showing up and saying, oh, I got this job. And you find out like none of it was what you wanted,
100%.
but you didn't have the courage or confidence to even ask for it or go deep on it. So that's a great story. Kudos to
Yeah,
you and that person. So that's cool.
felt good. Felt good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's perhaps we wrap that up. I feel
I think that feels right. It
deep
does. Yeah,
info on the whole thing, like
it
why
does.
why we're such believers in building your own path. I like your phrase of getting in the driver's seat. That's
Yeah.
exactly what we're trying to help people do. And the moments where we have those breakthroughs feel amazing. And for anybody listening, if there's anything in you that's resonated to what we're talking about, you're like, oh, I
Mhm.
don't feel like I'm actually in that level of control of my own career. Check us out. Find Dennis,
Yeah.
find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like, we'll show you the
Yeah.
ropes. We'll show you what we've got,
Yeah.
and we would be
Yeah.
thrilled to help you
Yeah.
kind of get back in charge of your own career.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's all it starts with is just acknowledging it and finding somebody who's willing to
Yeah,
just sit with you for a second, and just get you pointed in the right direction. So
100%.
awesome.
So
Cool. Great
thanks.
stuff.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right. Thank
see
you.
you next time for podcast
Next, yep,
number 5.
number 5. Awesome.
See you later.
Later.